Hey, this is Adam Torres, and I'm here to tell you that it has never been easier to start your very own podcast. At Mission Matters, our goal is to amplify stories that matter. That means we want to help you start your podcast because your story matters. We can do this in 3 different ways. 1, join our podcast school and take a free or paid course. 2, visit our resources page where we've already figured out what you need, such as where to host your podcast. Or 3, heck, we can even do everything for you through our podcast agency, including editing for cheaper than you can do in-house. Oh, and no contract, service is month to month. Get started by heading over to missionmatters.com and click on Start a Podcast. All right, now let's get into the show.
Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Lindsey on the line, and she's founder and CEO over at Worldwise Tutoring. Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to get into today's topic. So we're going to talk about reimagining the educational system. And I know that's one of the big things you're working on over at Worldwide Tutoring. But just to get us kicked off, tell us a little bit more about the business, please.
So Worldwide Tutoring was started in Chicago. We have expanded throughout Illinois and even in Texas for in-person services. But we work online with students all over the world. And kind of my line here is we work with all students of all ages and all abilities and all subjects. So it's really whatever you need help with, we are here to help.
That's awesome. And I'm at the end of this, I'm going to give you an opportunity of your website or social or wherever you want to direct traffic. But I just want to make sure that the right types of individuals and/or organizations connect with you. What type of students and/or organizations are typically a good fit to work with Worldwide Tutoring?
So, we do the typical thing as tutoring companies do. We work with students to help them improve their grades and their scores, and we know that that's important. But where we are unique is that we also teach students the underlying skills so that they can become better students, better employees, better members of society. So we really work with students to help them with their metacognition and their executive functions and their emotional intelligence and their interpersonal skills and all these other things that used to be considered nice to have skills, but now we're starting to realize more and more that they are essential skills, and we intertwine those into our instruction. So the ideal person for us to interact with, whether it's as a client or some kind of a business networking, would be someone who has a similar mindset of, that you have to sometimes put in a little bit of work in the beginning, but the payoffs are huge, and looking at things as holistically. So it's not just about getting a good grade, there's so much more to it.
That's awesome. And so let's go a little bit further into today's topic. So reimagining the educational system. I mean, that's a big topic. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover it all in a 15-minute podcast episode. But where do you want to start with this one? Because I do think it's an important one to bring up.
So, my background before starting the business was as a teacher. So I have been in the classroom as well as working one-on-one with students in the tutoring realm. And one of the things that I notice is that not only are we not having the opportunity to teach a lot of students these vital skills that I mentioned before, but we're also not giving them as much of an opportunity to explore and question and innovate, because most of the instruction, just because of classroom management, is very adult-led. And we kind of just tell the kids, here's what you need to learn, here's what you need to do. If you don't do it, then you get a bad grade, and that's the end of it. And what ends up happening is I see when I work one-on-one with a lot of the students who are struggling with the traditional system is that they end up stifling their innate curiosity and their personal interests and their unique voice to kind of fit the mold that we have created for them purely for management purposes. And I think what we really need to do, and some school districts are embracing it and making attempts at it, but we really need to commit to more of a student-led instruction. And that can seem really daunting because we're like, well, what? The students are going to take over. But when you do it right and you set up the systems correctly, it's actually really easy as long as you put in that work in the beginning. So, getting everything in place so that the students are able to still explore, the core content. They're still becoming good readers and good writers and able to articulate themselves. They're still getting opportunities to be exposed to subjects that may lead to a future interest. But what we're doing is allowing them to kind of guide the way and to be more of an agent of change in their life and giving them that platform to do so, which is really innate in them. We just tend to kind of shut it down.
Wow. And where do you think, so I know, there's a lot of varying opinions on this. And where do you think a lot of people are going wrong on this, kind of on this path of education delivery, we'll say? Where do you think people are going wrong? Because obviously, and the reason I asked this question, because I do want to frame it. So nobody goes into this intentionally thinking I want to do a bad job or I don't want to you know what I mean? It's
right.
not, I want to be really clear. We're not bashing anybody. We know that people work really hard and they're very passionate about what they do, but we do know there's opportunity areas. So that's how I want to kind of frame this. But where do you think people kind of go wrong?
I think that, we have our own, as parents, we have our own things going on. So we really trust the school system. We hand them over to the teachers and trust that they are doing what we hope they're doing. But when you're in the school system, you really start to realize how political it really is and how much red tape there is. And, it was probably a lot of these things were set up for good intentions, but as the school system's gotten larger, they kind of serve to more hinder processes than actually help them. So I think that, the task of reshaping the educational system is massive, but what we can do is change small things that we do with our children just in the way that we speak to them or the opportunities that we present to them, which do huge changes or have huge changes in their mindset. So, for example, one of the things I talk to my parents about is even a simple addition or switch of wording. So if the student says, oh, I can't do that, or I don't know that, you can add in the word yet. I can't do that yet. I don't know that yet. It's so minor, but what it does is start getting the child set up for more of a growth mindset, knowing that they are capable of anything. They may not know it now, and that's okay, but they can if they really put their mind to it. There's also, times where we need to actually stop and reflect on challenges that the students have faced because, as we know as adults, it's a lot of those challenges that actually build in us the resilience to persevere and to be successful. And if we don't have those challenges, then we don't really get the tools to be able to handle bigger challenges down the road. So one of the things I see with a lot of parents and educators is we come kind of out of love, try to protect our children from any kind of suffering, any kind of difficulty that they might have. And even as a tutor, there's times I see a child struggling with a problem and, oh man, I want to jump in there so bad, but I know they know how to do it. And I just kind of got to be patient and let them work through it. But then having a moment to reflect of what was challenging in that, what helped you get through it, what would help you the next time you see this. All of that is just helping to build in them skills of resilience so that they can continue to face bigger and bigger challenges. So they're very, very minor shifts, but they have huge consequences.
No, that's well said. So what do you think this next, what are some of the things that happen in this next evolution? So as education kind of evolves, as people are, and especially the way people are digesting content, right? So right now, when this is being recorded, everybody's at home in school for the most part, and everybody's so there's 2020, middle of 2020, just for context for the listeners, depending on when they're listening to this. And I just got off the phone a little bit ago with a good friend of mine who's talking, and you could hear his kids in the background. He's trying to figure out how to get the thing to work for them so they could do their lessons. I mean, what does this next evolution look like to you?
Well, we are definitely in a challenging time. There's so many uncertainties, but what I do think is a positive of this, there's many positives, but I think it's really put a spotlight on education and really what our students are lacking. I think the ability of those soft skills has really come to the front because if children don't have time management or initiative or creative problem solving, those things are really creating issues because now they're really asking for adults to help them since that's what they're used to seeing in a classroom. So I do think that the layers have been peeled off and people are seeing that there are some flaws in the education system that perhaps they hadn't seen before. And I think being at home is allowing for us to realize that learning doesn't always have to occur with a textbook. There is learning in cooking. There's learning in building with blocks. There's learning in chores. There's so much learning that could be done in daily life that is more student-led, that's giving them structured choices to be able to build the skills that are essential. And I think that with what's going on and everyone being at home and having multiple tasks, I think the students are going to grow, hopefully, to become more independent and explore. From that boredom comes the search for ideas. So hopefully it sparks their innate curiosity again and their innovation. And when they go back into the classroom, they're going to be like, what is this? So we got to kind of, adjust with them because they're going back to, what is natural in them. We all know how it is with kids, the questions why, and they're constantly looking around and exploring. And, they're going to start going back to that, which is the natural way that things should be.
Oh, that's well said, and I agree with it. And I do think it's an exciting time because I think that the biggest benefit of this, and again, I may be the worst person to have this comment because I don't have any kids, but just throwing that out there for context. But I think from my experience, it appears as though the teacher's role and the educational's role for a certain percent of the population is no longer looked at as just like babysitters or where you send your kids. Like now parents are forced. They're almost forced, well, not almost, they're forced to be involved based on the current situation. So now, parents have their own opinions too, right? Which could be bad or good depending on the parent. No comment here on any of this stuff, but I just mean like now at the least they're actively involved because they have to be if they want anything done. So this has become, it's no longer just a babysitter function or where I just send my kids and magically everything happens. I don't have to be involved because they're supposed to do it because it's their job, which that was never how it was intended to be, but that's kind of maybe for some people how it evolved over time. So I think that's an interesting thing that happens next too.
I agree. And, that's really unfortunate that it's become childcare. A child's education is extremely formative in the type of person they become and the path they take. And so sending them to school should be much more than just childcare. It really is setting them up for having bigger struggles down the line. And then, when the adults are struggling, how does that impact society? How does that impact the workforce? How does that, impact our relationships? So a lot of these skills that we can teach children really will translate into creating a more productive and happy society. But, it is a little work to reevaluate and to think of things as I need to be a little more involved. I have to shift the way that I do things. That's hard, but you are making things easier in the long run.
That's awesome. So, Lindsey, we're about out of time for today's topic, but I could talk to you about this all day long. You just scratched the surface. So, that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Worldwise Tutoring, what's the best way for them to reach out and to connect with you and your team?
So the website would be a good place to start. From there, you can access all of our social media and the blog and newsletter and everything as well. So the website is www.worldwise.tutoring.com. Also, like I said, we're on all social media, any social media you can imagine, except for I haven't gotten on TikTok yet. But, I say yet there, so who knows. But we're on all the other social medias, so you can also reach out to us on any of those as well.
Fantastic. Well, Lindsey, great having you on the show today. Been a pleasure, and thank you for giving us more insight into the great work you're doing over at Worldwise Tutoring. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review in the Apple iTunes Store, and if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Business, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Lindsey, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Adam, so much for giving me the opportunity to share this information.